On a quiet September night, a 24-year-old woman slipped past Paris Museum security, wielding a torch burning at 3,000 degrees Celsius to carve into history and vanish with 1.5 million euros in priceless gold. The official story ends with her arrest halfway to Shanghai. But as global fencing rings scramble to erase the trail, 5 kilograms of vanished treasure remain missing. And the cracks exposed run far deeper than one spectacular heist. How did a single intruder outwit everything Paris thought was unbreakable? After the last visitors drifted out and the museum's doors locked for the night, a single figure remained behind. She waited in silence as the building emptied, blending into the quiet routines of closing time. Security rounds passed, lights dimmed, and the city outside settled into early morning. At some point after midnight, she moved. Her route followed mapped patrol gaps, slipping through shadowed corridors toward the geology gallery. No alarm sounded as she reached the target. The tools came out, an angle grinder for the steel, a blowtorch for the glass. The torch burned at over 3,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to slice through bullet-resistant panels that had guarded gold for decades. In less than 10 minutes, the display case was open. No sensors tripped, no guards alerted. She worked quickly, gathering the gold: a Bolivian relic, a Ural sample, a California nugget, and the massive 5-kilogram Australian piece. Every surface she touched was wiped clean. Tools were left behind, stripped of prints. The entire operation, from breach to exit, lasted under 3 hours. By around 4 in the morning, she slipped out a back door, leaving only scorched glass and empty stands. The museum's alarms stayed silent, and for the next 5 hours, Paris slept, unaware that some of its rarest treasures had just vanished. Investigators pieced together the mechanics from the tools left behind. The angle grinder, a staple in construction, can chew through steel at up to 12,000 revolutions per minute, sending showers of sparks and heat into the metal. But the real power came from the oxy-acetylene torch. Its flame, reaching over 3,000 degrees Celsius, is hot enough to melt not just steel, but the bullet-resistant glass designed to shield the museum's most valuable specimens. Layers of glass and plastic meant to stop bullets or blunt force simply gave way under that kind of focused heat. Most modern museum cases rely on a web of sensors: infrared detectors to sense rapid temperature spikes, vibration monitors to catch impacts, and acoustic alarms tuned to the frequency of shattering glass. But these systems have limits. Infrared sensors, for example, are set to ignore the slow, steady rise in temperature that comes from building heating or sunlight. With careful technique, the thief kept the torch's heat tightly focused, never letting the temperature in the surrounding area spike fast enough to trigger an alert. The angle grinder's vibrations, usually a red flag for a sensor, were managed in short, controlled bursts, avoiding the sharp jolts that would set off an alarm. Forensic engineers believe the tools were used in a stepwise pattern: cut, pause, cool, wipe, each motion calculated to stay beneath the thresholds of outdated or poorly calibrated sensors. The result? A breach that left no digital trace, only the physical scars on steel and glass. The crime scene became a silent classroom, showing how precision and patience can defeat even the toughest defenses when technology falls behind. Forensic technicians cataloged the aftermath with methodical care. An angle grinder, still warm to the touch, rested near the breech display. Its cutting disc was worn down, metal dust caked along the rim. Nearby, an oxy-acetylene torch with empty gas canisters sat discarded, valves twisted shut. A heavy-duty saw, marked by flecks of gold, and a flathead screwdriver rounded out the set, each tool standard, nothing custom or traceable. The workbench of a break-in left in plain sight. Every handle, switch, and grip had been wiped clean. No fingerprints, no sweat, no stray hairs. Even the torch's pressure gauges and the grinder's trigger bore only the faint smears of solvent. Forensics dusted for prints, swabbed for DNA, but found only the sterile silence of a professional job. The floor was swept of shavings, but not completely. Technicians collected tiny curls of steel and glass, evidence of the precise cuts. On the scorched glass, only faint traces of glove fibers remained. The tools themselves were standard brands, purchased off the shelf, unregistered and unremarkable. Serial numbers were filed off or never present. Investigators boxed each item, tagging and logging them into evidence. The absence of personal traces told its own story, a thief who knew exactly what would be checked and how to erase a trail. The only leads were the tools themselves and the scars they left behind. From these fragments, detectives would have to reconstruct the path forward. 2 weeks after the Paris heist, Spanish police at Barcelona El Prat airport received a quiet alert. A 24-year-old Chinese woman, flagged by a European arrest warrant, was about to pass through passport control. Her destination was Shanghai. French detectives had tracked her movements across Europe, sharing flight manifests and surveillance details with Spanish authorities. The coordination was swift: Interpol notices, biometric matches, and a last-minute cross-check of boarding lists. As she approached the departure gate, plainclothes officers moved in, detaining her without incident. The arrest was the product of a rapid, multi-country effort, with French, Spanish, and Chinese law enforcement exchanging information in real time. The suspect carried no luggage beyond a single backpack. Inside, customs agents found several irregularly shaped gold fragments, later weighing close to 1 kilogram. The gold had been melted into crude lumps, stripped of any markings or identifiers. Spanish authorities held her in custody while French prosecutors rushed extradition paperwork through diplomatic channels. Within days, she was transferred back to France under heavy guard, facing charges of theft and criminal conspiracy. The arrest closed a critical gap: physical custody of the main suspect secured, gold fragments in evidence, and the first solid link between the Paris crime scene and the international fencing pipeline. The next step: forensic labs would test the seized gold to confirm its origin. Forensic chemists at the Paris Police Laboratory began their work with a single heavy envelope. Inside, nearly 1 kilogram of gold fragments, seized from the suspect's backpack in Barcelona. The gold had been melted into rough, irregular lumps. No serial numbers, no museum stamps, no trace of its original form. To prove a direct link to the museum's missing treasures, scientists turned to metallurgical fingerprinting. Each sample was dissolved and analyzed for its unique chemical signature. Trace elements, tiny amounts of silver, copper, and rare earths, matched the profiles documented in the museum's own catalog. The Bolivian relic, the Ural Mountain sample, the California nugget, and the 5-kilogram Australian piece each carried distinctive impurities and isotopic ratios, the result of their geological origins. The fragments seized in Spain mirrored these patterns exactly. For prosecutors, this was decisive. The gold in custody could be proven, beyond reasonable doubt, to have come from the Paris collection. With the chemical match in hand, the case moved from suspicion to formal charge. French authorities secured extradition, and the suspect was delivered to a Paris magistrate. The indictment listed theft and criminal conspiracy, citing not only the physical act, but also the planning, pre-study of patrols, knowledge of sensor blind spots, and the technical steps taken to erase evidence. The forensic report became the backbone of the prosecution's argument, translating raw chemistry into courtroom proof. The legal stakes were clear: not just the recovery of stolen gold, but the defense of cultural heritage, and the message sent to anyone considering a similar crime. The case was now trial-ready, its foundation built on the invisible signatures left behind by the world's rarest gold. Gold in a museum is never just metal. The 4 specimens taken from the Paris National Museum of Natural History each carried a story far bigger than their weight or their price. The Bolivian piece, an 18th century donation, had traveled continents and centuries, a relic of colonial trade, scientific exploration, and the shifting boundaries of empire. Its value lay in the hands that passed it on, the records that traced its journey, and the research it enabled for generations of geologists and historians. Nearby, in the same case, was the Ural Mountain sample, gifted to the museum in 1833 by Russian naturalists during the early years of imperial expansion. It was more than a mineral specimen. It was a fragment of the Earth's deep interior, tied to the earliest scientific exchanges between France and Russia. Researchers studying its impurities had mapped the geological history of an entire region. The California Gold Rush nugget, dug up in the 1850s, represented a moment when the world's attention turned west. It stood for migration, risk, and the fever that drew thousands across oceans. Its surface still bore the marks of riverbed mining, a tangible connection to the gold rush era that shaped both American history and global markets. Then there was the 5-kilogram Australian nugget, discovered in 1990. Its sheer size, nearly the weight of a brick, made it a marvel, but its scientific worth was even greater. The nugget's crystalline structure was unique, offering clues to the formation of gold deposits beneath ancient Australian landscapes. For scientists, it was a reference point. For curators, a centerpiece. For visitors, a wonder. Altogether, these specimens had an estimated market value of 1.5 million euros, but no insurance payout, no replacement could restore their meaning. Each piece was catalogued, photographed, and studied in detail, its provenance documented through centuries of museum records. Once removed from their context, melted or recut, they would lose not just their history, but their power to teach and inspire. The loss was more than financial. It was a fracture in the world's shared memory. Gold stolen from a museum rarely stays in its original form for long. The first stop is almost always a receiver, someone waiting in a safe apartment or warehouse ready to take possession before sunrise. In the Paris case, only a fraction of the haul was ever recovered. The rest vanished into a system built to erase origins and confuse investigators. Melting is the first step. High-purity gold is heated in small, controlled batches, often using portable furnaces or industrial workshops rented by the day. Any museum stamp, serial number, or unique feature is lost in the process. Once liquefied, the metal is poured into crude molds, forming irregular lumps or thin rods, shapes that blend easily with legal scrap. These batches are then split and routed to different cities, a tactic known as compartmentalization. Each courier is told only where to deliver their piece, never the full plan. Paris, Brussels, Rotterdam, and Antwerp are favored hubs, thanks to their busy refineries and tolerant customs regimes. In these cities, legitimate gold flows mix with illicit shipments, sometimes in the same delivery van. Some gold heads to small refineries, where it is further purified and recast, often commingled with legal stocks. Others are sold directly to grey market dealers who specialize in moving untraceable metal across borders. Buyers range from jewelry manufacturers to private investors and, in some cases, organized crime groups with connections in the Middle East or Southeast Asia. The speed of this process makes recovery nearly impossible. Within days, the stolen gold is indistinguishable from legal supplies, its story erased by fire and movement. Law enforcement faces a moving target, a network of anonymous actors, each handling only a fragment, each step designed to frustrate investigation. The missing 5 kilograms from Paris could be anywhere, melted, recast, and already part of rings, coins, or bullion bars traded on the open market. The system works because it is fast, compartmentalized, and global, with every handoff engineered to obscure the past. October brought another shock. Masked thieves stormed the Louvre, using a construction access point along the Seine to slip inside during early hours. The break-in took less than 7 minutes. Angle grinders screamed against armored glass, and display cases shattered in the Imperial Jewelry Gallery. 9 pieces vanished, including a tiara and brooches linked to the Napoleonic era. The team escaped on high-powered scooters, weaving through Paris traffic before police could react. Forensic teams found DNA traces on the broken cases and getaway vehicles, but the jewels themselves disappeared into the same grey market channels that swallowed the Paris gold. Security reviews revealed the same pattern. Only a third of museum halls were under camera watch, and staff shortages left patrols stretched thin. Internal reports had warned of these gaps months earlier, but budget debates kept upgrades on hold. Police in France flagged a disturbing trend. Just months before, a tip-off stopped a planned theft at the Château de Fontainebleau, where a mixed crew had been casing the Chinese pavilion for over a year. Surveillance and informant leads led to arrests before the break-in could happen, but the plot underscored how vulnerable even the most storied collections had become. Each case pointed to the same weaknesses: renovation blind spots, outdated alarms, and insider knowledge of museum routines. The pattern extended beyond art and gold. In the UK, 2 students engineered a digital scheme targeting the National Rail delay repay system. Using dozens of fake identities, bank accounts, and SIM cards, they filed thousands of fraudulent claims, extracting over £210,000 before being caught. Court records showed a calculated playbook: algorithmic exploitation, rapid transfers, and a belief that digital crime was low risk. Sentencing hearings revealed a shift in youth crime. The pursuit of quick gains, enabled by gaps in oversight and a sense of detachment from real-world consequences. Through these cases, a systemic picture comes into focus. Portable, high-value assets, gold, jewels, antiques, are irresistible targets when security lags behind criminal ingenuity. The missing 5 kilograms of Paris gold remain untraced, likely already melted and recast, their origins erased. Museums face a hard reality. Only a fraction of galleries are monitored, and warnings from staff and auditors often go unheeded until after a loss. Law enforcement analysts and policymakers now debate how to balance public access with real protection, as the cycle of theft and laundering continues to outpace reform. On September 16, 2023, a single intruder used an angle grinder and blowtorch to breach Paris's National Museum of Natural History, escaping with gold artifacts valued at €1.5 million. Forensic analysis later linked 1 kilogram of recovered fragments directly to the museum's collection, but 5 kilograms remain missing. The suspect, arrested in Barcelona while attempting to board a flight to Shanghai, now faces charges of theft and criminal conspiracy in France. Official documents confirm these items, spanning centuries and continents, hold irreplaceable scientific and cultural value. Yet, as with the Louvre's sub-7-minute jewelry theft and a foiled plot at Fontainebleau, investigators have not fully mapped the international networks or traced all missing pieces. Security audits reveal persistent gaps. Only 1/3 of key galleries have camera coverage, and staff shortages continue. Today, the fate of the unrecovered gold and the full reach of global fencing rings remains uncertain. What is clear: the world's museums are not just vaults of history, but ongoing targets, and the struggle to protect our collective heritage is far from over.